Welcome back to the Good Dude, Good Dad podcast. I'm Jordan.
And I am Ben.
And
Day? Huh?
I don't know.
Last week I got interviewed, and after listening to it back, I talked so much.
It was good.
But today I'm going to interview Jordan.
You saved me from having to figure out more questions.
Yeah, I mean, I could see you really weren't interested in interviewing me, so I decided I got to take matters into my own hands and go for it.
You gave me like 2 seconds. Well, it was perfect because you actually, it's funny, every question I would come up with in my mind, you would answer it as you're going through. So it worked out really well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He just had
and we don't have to hear me say like a million times.
He had zero interest in hearing what I said.
I've heard it all before. No,
something cool we got. You can't see it with how Jordan's sitting, but we got the second full release shirt we're doing. It's pretty dope. Got it printed by a local husband-wife team here in Orange County. Super excited to... Oh, there you go. You can see it. But the artist that did the work is El Ray. We use him for a lot of things. Maybe we'll tag him in Instagram on this one.
Let's go.
We have another couple that he's going to be doing for us, actually. I didn't even show Jordan yet. Let me show him.
I find out last minute, but I love all the shirts and the merch, so...
I just try
Ben's
to make
our creative.
I just try to make things simple for him, you know?
He saw my original logo in the blue and white and goes, we're not going to leave any of the creative decisions up to Jordan.
I did have to change it.
Let's get that straight now.
This is the next shirt we'll be releasing.
Ooh, you guys are going to like that.
It's pretty sick, right?
Yeah, it's super sick.
And you can do it on different colors.
Oh yeah, that's gonna look so good.
My thought, I haven't even talked to him about it, but is to have him do almost like a full line for us. So like have him do like 2 more shirts for the rest of the year type thing. So you'll have like a total of 4.
Yeah.
And we'll call that like the El Ray series.
Oh,
and
sick.
then still have like our normal stuff.
Yeah.
So hopefully you say yes if you listen to this. If not, I hope you say yes still. All right. So last week I talked a lot about kind of just what got me here as the man that I am, as the husband that I am, the father that I am, the business owner that I am, and just like the overall like who I am and how I got to where I'm at. And one thing before we jump into Jordan's interview is just I want to like remind people, you know, like what I am going through or what has helped me get here. The only reason why we're wanting to share is because every one of us have different life circumstances. Every one of us come from a different way of life, different walk of life. And the one thing that I think is universal, though, at least if you're listening to something like this, is I think we all would be able to relate on the desire to want to get better at whatever it is that is the thing in front of us, right? I feel like most of us can at least resonate with that. So you might not resonate with my journey of getting to where I'm at, or my faith, or my family life. But, you know, again, if you're listening to a podcast of this style, more than likely there's something kind of tugging on you to figure out some form of a change or encouragement or inspiration, or just finding more support, finding, you know, a sense of like belonging, whatever the case is. I feel like, again, we can agree on those things. And so I think it's just important to kind of say out loud after I listen to myself talk for so long of this isn't just for us to talk. It's not for just our guests to talk. But again, you know, we're going to keep referring to it, but like that movement and creating something that is more unique and special than we even thought.
I didn't get to tell you. It was super cool. We had a DM this morning from somebody who is following us, and he asked me if we had any good recommendations for books.
Oh, cool.
Which was cool because we had actually just done that podcast with Ned, so I was able to pull the one that you grabbed. I grabbed the one that I grabbed, and then I had a few others that I've read over the years that I recommend to either fathers or men. But yeah, like you. First of all, you didn't talk too much last time at all. That was fantastic. You spent the time. You took the time to. I mean, the whole point of it was to find out who you are as a person, and the best way to find out who you are as a person is just to, and you're naturally articulate, is to go through that process of explaining your life. And you did exactly what I had hoped you would do, and it worked out it worked out actually 10 times better than I even thought it could have. And it's like we had talked about with Sean. It was nice that like when Sean was telling his story, he laid it all out beautifully, and you did the same thing where you told a fantastic story. And I think you can tell if you're being interviewed correctly, which you'll see from me that it won't happen, is that you're naturally answering those questions that the interviewer would have as you're going along.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that you did fantastically. But we not only that is I wanted to say that we talk about our faith, but this, as a good dude, good dad, we don't want it to be only a faith-based, like, it's not just for Christian dads. Like, that's not our goal. Our goal is from any race, religion, any background that you have, that this is a place for you to come to listen and try to improve and to make connections and feel a sense of belonging. Because like he said, I feel like there's this, we're all looking for this place of belonging and movement and trying to get better. And that's our whole goal, is just to foster that with improving. And that's being a better husband, that's being better with your finances, that's being better with, with your kids. Like, I gave on that book list, I threw a couple extra books in there, and I told them, I was like, hey, these aren't dad books. These are just being a good man book. Mm-hmm. And if you work on being a good man, and that's one thing about Good Dude, Good Dad. Originally when I made it, it was supposed to be good dude, like, comma, good dad. Like, there's both. It's not just for dads. It's also for men that are just wanting to be better men. And through that, eventually, if you become a father, you'll become a good dude by trying to be a good man. And that was kind of my whole hope with all of it.
With that, give us a quick little background about what got you to where you're at right now. Like, the you can do as in depth as you want, or you can just do literally like the steps that have led us to right now.
Yeah. So my life kind of almost follows a path of my jobs, which is kind of weird. That's how when I feel like everybody looks back, if you are looking back at your life, you kind of find these pivotal moments. And for me, it's kind of go along with career paths in a way. So I grew up middle class family in Orange County. I had a fantastic dad, an amazing mom that I'm almost a stay-at-home mom. I homeschooled most of my life, which is why my mom was my first dance and my first kiss. I'm just kidding. That's not what happened.
Maybe it was.
But it's also why I'm socially awkward. No, I grew up homeschooled. My dad instilled a good work ethic in me pretty early on. I remember I was 12 years old. I was playing roller hockey at the time. We had just transitioned from ice hockey. And I was playing defense, and I wanted to play goalie. And my dad goes, perfect. You want to play goalie? You want all those pads? You're going to come and work with me. And so at that time on the weekends, my dad was doing construction. This was like late 90s, early 2000s. So back then, child labor wasn't really an issue. But we'd ask each construction site if it was okay that on the weekends I came and I worked construction. And that's exactly what I did. I used a nail gun. I had a hammer. I used my drills. There was really nothing off limits for me. I used all the saws. But I got to work construction I did that for like almost 2 years, I think, on weekends with my dad. And that's how I saved up the money that I needed to buy my hockey gear. And then after that, in high school, my dad and I started a company together with a business partner that towards I think it was my junior year, our business partner basically cut and ran and took everything, and my family instantly overnight was homeless. And the transition that happened is we were literally, I still remember it, and I feel like I'm hodgepodgey, but I remember our first business was at this point where we were about to do some pretty incredible things, to the point where my dad was like, hey, I've loved aviation my whole life. My dad's like, hey, we should pick out an airplane that we can buy in the next year. And then we can both start working on our pilot's license together. So I remember being 16 years old, looking at an airplane. To the next minute, my parents go, dude, everything's gone. They're going to try it. Our car's about to get repossessed. We are moving in our 24-foot by 8-foot toy hauler. You, me, your sister, your mom, my dad. And Yeah, like overnight we went from doing pretty well to absolutely nothing, to like my dad and I eating like one meal a day. Most of it was canned tuna and spinach. I remember our cars running out of gas on the side of the road. We had to live in, we bounced between two like campgrounds. You can only do 2 weeks at a time where we lived. So we did 2 weeks at one campground and 2 weeks at another campground. I remember running out of gas, trying to get from one campground to the next campground. And it was a humbling experience. And again, it taught us more work ethic, where, you know, my dad and I would, my dad was amazing, and he immediately went to work and figured out everything he could. And I finished high school, and basically we just both worked nonstop. Like I would go to Starbucks in the morning, start there super early. From there, once I left Starbucks, I would go to a video editing job. I had a video editing company at the time, and I was doing freelance for another guy. So I did video editing company for the afternoons, and then I'd go home. I'd probably get about like an hour's worth of rest, or 40 minutes worth of rest. And then we'd go, my dad and I would go work at Costco until like, like almost midnight. And then we'd get up again at 4 a.m. and do the same thing. And my dad had a similar schedule. So that was our life. And that time I fell away from the Lord, and I wanted nothing to do with Christianity, really. I didn't know why God would do something like that. That was just me. And I came from an awesome Christian loving home, and I just kind of went the polar opposite. I guess I didn't, it was funny because when you're talking about PTSD, you're like, you don't think you have a problem because you look at all these other people and you're like, they're the ones that have problems.
Yeah.
And I remember, I had a buddy that back in the day, ended up having like he got into like cocaine and stuff like that. And I didn't want anything to do with that. So I stayed away, but I started getting to a point where I was just drinking a lot of alcohol, like a crazy amount. And I don't even think my parents really know how much we were drinking, but just got on this path where I was like, forget Christianity, forget like this whole like being a good guy thing. Like if you really want to be ahead, like get ahead, you need to be like a total jerk. You need to be like unemotional, and you need to be, I basically had like little man syndrome because I'm short. So I was like, I need to act tough. I need to do all these things. And at that time I ended up going to work for, a Boy Scout ranch, teaching kids how to ride horses. And I was working for a retired Vietnam era SEAL. And so I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go join the SEAL teams. And that like became my whole life focus, was being cool and being tough. And that's when Ben and I kind of reconnected, actually, was that he came back from the Marine Corps, and then we got reintroduced through a friend of ours. And that's just what we did. I mean, I drank a lot and worked out a lot and just worked a lot and was just kind of a crappy person. and that continued for several years, to the point where I was getting ready to go to, I was getting ready to enlist into the Navy. I had my contracts ready and I was ready to go. And at the time I was dating a girl, and yes, I got her pregnant. And I was at this moment where I was like, I remember being there, and she told me, and my plan was to go. The whole reason we started even remotely talking and dating was because I knew I was leaving for the Navy, so I didn't really care. I was like, whatever, man, I'll just hang out with this chick for a while and then do my own thing. And long story short, we ended up losing the baby, and I had already given up my SEAL contract and kind of burned a lot of bridges. And I was just in this pit of just being a crappy person. And it was right around that time I picked up a book, which I recommended to him. It was called Tender Warrior by Stu Weber. And I don't remember how I got it or who gave it to me or how it ended up in my hands, or I think I was maybe listening to a podcast or something, and I got this book called Tender Warrior, and he talked about how you could still be a man, still be a tough man, and still be a good man. And it basically, he's like, you could be all these things and yet still be a good man. And for me, I know, this isn't a Christian podcast by any means, but I'm going to talk about my faith. You could be a good Christian, and it kind of changed my whole perspective on life, and how to live life. It didn't happen right away. It took me a while. I ended up becoming an EMT after my dad and I saved a guy that tried to commit suicide by lighting himself on fire with gasoline in his car. I ended up working as an EMT for about 4.5 years. Went to fire academy, got all my fire stuff. Went through paramedic school. Got all those licenses, all those certificates, and my whole plan was to be a paramedic at that time. I didn't really know what else to do. I just knew that I wasn't gonna be a SEAL anymore. And long story short, basically through that, I ended up meeting my wife. My now wife. We dated for a while, and we were chatting, and she had family that were firefighters, and I had a bunch of friends that were firefighters, and there's nothing wrong with firefighting. Firefighting's an amazing career. I just realized that it wasn't what I actually wanted to do. What I wanted to do was to be a dad and a husband, and I didn't want to be gone all the time. And that was just me. I just didn't want to be gone all the time. And so at that point, my wife and I had the opportunity to open our own business, and so we did. And ever since then, I've been a serial entrepreneur. I've also recently taken over running Ben's coffee shop cafe down in San Clemente, which is not somewhere I even thought I would be. But yeah, so that transition from Stu Weber to me trying to figure out what my life was going to look like after all that, it was a slow progression of getting my feet back under me. Right about when my wife and I got married and stuff like that is actually when neither one of us were following the Lord, and we were like, we want to be the best parents and people we could be. I think the best way for us to start doing that would be to go back to church. So we actually went back to church, and that's how we kind of got back in the Lord, and we felt like everything was going great. We had our first son, Hudson, who was just awesome. And we found out that we were pregnant with our daughter, and life was going amazing. I was working at that time just a ridiculous amount. And one week, I started feeling a little weird, and I kind of just dismissed it. Like I was trying to send emails and things weren't coming out right. I was trying to text, and I felt foggy, and I felt like confused and discombobulated. And I just kept hitting my right leg on things. I kept stubbing my right foot over and over again throughout the week. And I was like, this is so weird. And it all culminated to one day, I was getting ready to take some meetings, and Caitlin was like, hey, go take out the trash before your meeting. And so I did. And I was walking outside, and I audibly said out loud, I was like, I feel weird. And when I said weird, my face drooped, and I felt it. I felt my face droop, and I was like, that's weird. And then my face came back, and I was like, with a background in medicine and seeing all I had seen, I was like, there's no way I'm having a stroke right now. It's not possible. I'm 30 years old. I was like, that doesn't happen to 30-year-olds. I'm fine. That's so weird, but I'm totally cool. And so I took out the trash, and I went back upstairs, and I looked at Caitlin, and I was like, hey, if I come back up here for any reason, take me to the hospital. And I didn't say what hospital. I didn't give her really any good instructions. I went downstairs, and I went out to my home office, and immediately almost collapsed and fell out of my chair. Came upstairs, was completely nonverbal. All I could say was I. So I just kept saying, I. And Caitlin's like, you need to go to the hospital. And I was like, I just shook my head, yes. She's like, okay. Luckily, there's a stroke center right near us. She just happened to say that hospital because it's kind of the closest one to us, Mission Hospital. And I was like, yes. And she took me and that happened basically. Took me in. I was stroking out. We should have called 911, but I was having a stroke, so it was kind of hard for me to figure that out. Caitlin, I was trying to reassure her that it wasn't that serious. In fact, I remember our drive to the hospital. I was trying to comfort her, and I was trying to tell her, like, hey, it's not as bad as it seems, but I couldn't talk. So I was like, and she was looking at me, and finally she looked at me, she goes, babe, stop talking. And I was like, what? I was like, she's like, you're making it worse. I was like, and I just sat there like this. I remember putting my hands on my thing, and I just sat there, and I was like, okay, we're fine. So we get to the hospital. Luckily, I knew from one of the nurses from back in the day, and I tried to start talking to her, and she realized what was going on, and they wheeled me back, and they said, hey, yeah, you're having a stroke. You need to go into emergency surgery right now. Is during COVID-ish time, so they wouldn't let my wife in the hospital. So like, we're gonna call your wife right now, and hopefully she gets back in here in time to say goodbye to you. You should probably say goodbye to her, and because we're not sure if you're gonna make it out of this. And I was like, I had enough verbal where I could say, I was like, I'm not leaving, and they're like, no, you have to. And I was like, wife, I'm not leaving.
Yeah.
So Caitlin came in. I gave her a big kiss, gave her my wedding ring, and I remember I was able to get out at that point. I was like, hey, tell Hudson that I love him, and I love you too. And so handed her off my wedding ring, and I was getting wheeled into the emergency surgery. And I remember I just was laying there, and I was like, it was the first thing that popped into my head is a prayer that my dad had taught me. Is the pilot's prayer. It's, dear Lord, please help me not to mess this up. And I just I was just like, Lord, I have a 1-year-old boy, and I have a daughter on the way, and I have a wife, and I take care of my mother-in-law. I can't die. So you got to figure this out. And I remember I just said, you have to figure this out. And immediately, I don't know how to explain it, but just this warm comfort, like that I was already had been stripped down pretty much naked, but I just felt like this warm blanket was laid over me. And I immediately just felt calm. And it was just a crazy, serene peace. Long story short, I wake up, and I had a miracle surgery where I came out and I had no deficits whatsoever, to the point where my doctor goes, I don't believe in God, but if I did, you would be a miracle. And I was like, well, you better start believing, bro, because that's what it is. And I came out of that, and I remember, I think I said it on a podcast, it was like we got home, and it was like a week down the road, and I was in the bathroom. I was literally going to the bathroom just by myself downstairs, and all of a sudden I just started bawling. Like, I just broke down, and I just started sobbing. And I was like, why am I still here? Like, I was like, why, of all the people that I'm a good person now, but I've been a pretty crappy person. Like, why the heck am I still here? Mm-hmm. And I was like crying, and I just was like, all right, man, like, all right, God, I'm going to do my best to be the best possible dad and man I can be, from here on out. And I'd already been trying really hard, but I was like, I'm just going to continue to try to do the best I can. And I'm going to kind of just, whatever I feel like you're calling me to do, I'm just going to do it, regardless of whether or not I feel like I want to do it, which sounds weird. Long story short, a little bit while later, I felt like I should do a podcast of all things, which is where this kind of all birthed out of. I don't like the sound of my own voice.
He does.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Despite my constant talking, I actually don't like talking. I don't think I'm very articulate. I ended up starting a podcast, and it was my whole point was to call out first of all, the whole point was to leave, in case I did die early, leave all the lessons that I had learned and what it meant to be a man to my son, and show him that I was trying to be the best dad I could possibly be for him. And the second one was to call out, there were some men in my life that I found out that weren't acting like men, or they had pretended that they were, and they weren't my definition of being like a good man. They had pretended and played that role. And then I found out some things that they were doing behind their wives' backs, and some business dealings that I was just like, you need to be called out. And I was like, that led to like, I feel like there's more men that need to be called out. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect.
Yeah.
Because I'm not. In fact, I mess up a lot of things.
We all do.
But I was like, I think the conversation needs to be had. And so I was like, well, I'm going to start that conversation. So that's kind of how it led me all to this point now. I have 2 beautiful kids. I have one, my third's due in October. I'm married to the love of my life. She makes me a better man in every single way. She gives me constant grief and like teases me relentlessly, and I love her so much. She's amazing, and I wouldn't be where I am without her. But yeah, that was a lot.
It is a lot.
I felt like you there.
There you go, dude. Yeah. See, you just talk.
Except yours was more like flowed better. I feel like mine was choppy.
Nah, dude, it's the stroke. So too soon.
No, I need to use that as an excuse more.
Oh man,
I don't use that nearly enough.
Let's go back to. I didn't want to interrupt you because I wanted you to keep flowing, but that moment you found that book, Tender Warrior, there had to be, and this is something that we've talked about I would have never fully grasped it until a mentor of mine, who actually, trained me to be a business coach, business leader, leadership coach, all that fun stuff, right? His name's Hendray, and I would love to have him on again. He lives in Austin now, but we could do like the whatever it's called.
Riverside?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was one of the first people in my life that I think got me to start thinking of things through, for lack of better terms, frameworks, right? Mm-hmm. And in those frameworks, there's a framework for everything. There's a framework for business ownership, for leadership, for creating, systems and structures, for being a dad, for being a husband, all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. But he would tell me and talk about having to create some form of tension, right? And tension, the reason for it is without tension, it's almost impossible to create momentum, right? Because momentum is moving, it's force, it's something that is in motion. Mm-hmm. Without some form of like a tension point, how do you slingshot something into momentum? Mm-hmm. And I might have butchered how he said it, but that's how I view it now. And so for when you were sitting back then and you don't remember how you got the book, there had to be several things that got you to the point to even want to read that book. You were a turd of a man. You were doing all these different crazy things, right? You were drinking a lot. What was it that made you actually decide to read that book? Because we have one. I hit rock bottom before I decided to change, right?
Yeah.
So there was a very clear moment in my life where I was like, whoa, dude, you are an idiot and a piece of crap. Yeah. But there was an event that caused that.
Yeah, so I actually read that book. The reason I brought that book up is because it laid the framework for when that moment happened later on. So I read that book before, I read that book and a seed was planted. And I don't think I explained that well. So at the time I was trying to become a Navy SEAL. I read a book by, it was called Fearless. It was about Adam Brown. If you ever get a chance to read that book, phenomenal. Just an amazing dude that ended up going SEAL Team 6 and passed away. But at the time, I was basically trying to get my hands on any book that was SEAL Team related. Like, that was just my whole goal. That's actually how I got Tender Warrior, was through that book. So Adam Brown's book, Tender Warrior. So I ended up reading it. And a seed was planted because I was still a turd of a person. So the girlfriend ended up getting I didn't even put this part. The girl I ended up getting pregnant is now my wife. But at the time we had that happen, then we broke up, and then we got back together. It was when we lost the baby, I think, is really when I had that big turning point. Because I want to say it was that, but I did a lot of other stupid things right after that. But I feel like I was more aware of myself at that point. So we lost the baby. I I just felt like crap. So Caitlin stopped talking to me. I remember sitting in, at this point, my parents had moved. I was in a trailer by myself. So I was living in the trailer by myself, and not a lot of people know the story. But I had started drinking a lot. I got to the point where I considered taking my life. Basically, it was the point of it. So I hit this rock bottom moment where I was like, nobody cares. I lost a baby. I've messed up as like a Christian son. Like what has been, my parents love me regardless. But when you're in that moment and you're in your 20s, you're emotional. And I was like, I'm not the son my parents hoped I would be. I'm not the man I hoped I would be. I'm just not doing anything well. And I was like, the best way to get rid of that would just be to get rid of me. And from what people I've talked to now, like that's happened to actually a lot of people. But for me, that was a big thing. I literally was like, yeah, I think everyone would be better off without me. And I remember what stopped me was imagining my parents coming in and finding me and having to clean up after me. And that's what stopped me is the thought of my parents having to clean up after me after everything that they had already gone through financially and all that kind of stuff. And that broke me. And I literally, in that moment, I felt so weak. And I was like, the next day I woke up and I just felt weak and full of shame and just like, I was like, man, what are you doing? Like, I was just like, buddy, what are you doing? Like, it's time for you to step up and be like an actual man, and stop pretending to be a man, and stop doing the things that you think people want you to do to be a man. Like, go be a Navy SEAL to overcompensate for your tininess. Like, actually, like, you can be a man without doing all those different things. Yeah. And so, that's when that started. I still went and messed up a bunch of other stuff along the way. But I think that was that tension point. So a seed was planted with Stu Weber. The seed started to sprout there. And then right before, after that I had tried dating a few girls and everything just kind of got messed up. And I remember I was like, okay, I just want to I want to find the right girl. I want to get married. I'm over all this crap. I was like, I just need to focus on being the one that would attract the person that I would want. I was like, if I'm the man that the man I would want to be, that the woman that I would want would marry, then I know that my likelihood will go up. So that happened. And then right after Caitlin and I got together, we had some, I found a mentor for my life, and he basically just kind of called me out. He's like, how are you doing in all these different areas of your life? Like, are you actually stepping up and focusing on trying to be better? And that's kind of, that's where the seed turned from a sprout to started turning into a plant. And it was like, when he stepped into my life and was like, hey man, and the cool part was he had the kind of marriage that I wanted to have. So, he had the kind of marriage and the finances and everything that I wanted to have. So when I heard him say that to me, like, hey, like, how are you actually doing in all these different areas of your life? And have you, intentionally tried to grow? I looked at him, I was like, no. And he's like, well, you might want to think about it. Yeah. And that's kind of, I feel like that's where that plant really started to grow. And I'm slow. I think that's what it is. And for me, it wasn't like some people like for you, it was like an instant change.
Yeah. But
for me, it wasn't.
And that's fine. And that's okay. 'Cause not everyone is an instant change, and not everyone is a slow change. Some are a mixture. Some are hot and cold. Some are, machine gun fire, and then it's out when you're out. And that's okay. It's just, I think the coolest part about all of this is everyone has a different journey. Like we just said when we opened the podcast, it's the journey through all these different lenses that we can genuinely like value and take something away.
Yeah.
Right? So for you, like your story is awesome, and that's who made you. And so let's before we wrap it up, I would love for you to essentially just take that last 16-year span that you just talked about and put those into a couple like actionable steps for people to take away. Because for you, like you said, you didn't have an instant. I had it. Mine was an instant.
Yeah.
And I can't really necessarily give you, we've talked about it on here.
Yeah.
I can't give you an actionable steps that I took. I literally just hated it and I changed it. But that's not actionable, you know? Like, I like that you said you had seeds being planted and they were slowly sprouting. So all of those things you did, there was water happening, right? You were watering the seeds in order for them to sprout. So give like a few bullet points.
Well, no, I think you did have an actionable step, and that was taking self accountability that you're being a turd, you know, like that. No, that actually takes a lot of. I'm not going to get on like a dad soapbox rant, but right now I feel like there's not enough self accountability happening in the world.
Yeah.
Like across the board, you know, like when it really comes down to it, at the end of the day, the only one that you can really affect and the only one that can really take responsibility for how everything's going in your life is you.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, like, especially if you live in the United States, I don't care if, and I can say this because I've been the poorest of poor and I've gotten to a place where, like, I mean, we're not great, but I'm not horrible. I have food on my table, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, at the end of the day, you just have to take responsibility for you, yourself, and your life. So take an honest like, my first thing would be, my actionable steps was take an honest assessment of your life. Do you, like, spiritually, how are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Financially, how you doing? Physically, how you doing? Relationally, how you doing? And find out how you're doing in all those different areas. Rate yourself 1 to 10. Like 10 being amazing, 1 being just absolute garbage. And then after that, it's like, okay, let's take it that. Okay, let's look, where do I want to be? Like we talked about last time. Where do I want to be? Where's my point B?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where do I want my finances to be better? Do I want my marriage or my relations to my friends and stuff to be better? Do I want this to be better? Do I want that to be better? Take ownership that the only person that really can change that is you.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, find actionable steps in there to move forward. And that might be different for everyone. You know, for maybe it's relational. If it's your friends, like, you just don't, like, either you don't feel like you're connecting with your friends or you don't have enough friends, like, go out and do something outside of your comfort zone. Reach out to a buddy you haven't talked to in a while. If it's your marriage, sit down with your wife and ask her, like, how can I love you better? Like, that's a legitimate, great question if you're married. How can I love and support you better? And then don't take offense to what they say.
Yeah.
Listen, process, try to implement. If you need help, like, there's one thing that John Maxwell says really well. He's like, if you want to know your flaws, ask those people around you because they know what they are.
Yeah.
And so if you really want, like, don't get pissed off when you find out the answer, but if you really want to know what you're struggling in your life, ask someone around you. They'll give you the honest truth.
Yeah. Well, hopefully.
Hopefully. That's another key point. And then after that, like, find men, women, a podcast, a book, a TV show, something that's in that realm of what you want to get better in, and start digging into it. Read it, listen to it. You know, whatever your thing is. For me, it's books. I don't know why. I don't even like to read. I'm slow. I have like a 5th grade reading level. My wife laughs all the time because she'll like read something on her phone and be like, haha, and then hand it to me. And she's like, you're not done yet. You know, like 10 minutes later, as I'm like, reading, you know, like there's so many, we have the entire world on our phone and we use it to look at dumb cat videos. Like, you can literally learn anything you want to learn. Especially in these age of podcasts. Like, if you don't want to, you're listening to ours probably to hear this, but yeah, find something in that area and do it. But yeah, so one, take accountability. Know
assessment.
Take an assessment. 2, if you need to, ask someone.
Mm-hmm.
3, pinpoint the areas that you want to grow in and decide what your end goal is that you want it to be at. And then 4 is execute, you know?
Yeah. No, and I think that's a great way of wrapping all of that up, because those are all areas that every single one of us can work on, right? Like, when I coach people, I haven't really coached anyone in a while. I don't know if I genuinely like the coaching component. I don't mind it, but it's not it's something I'm passionate about, but not fully passionate about.
Yeah.
But it's what you do, right? You take an assessment, you lay the foundation, you do the groundwork, and then the lasting goal is to be viable, right? To continue to be able to add all these things you just learned about yourself and implement them into every other place in your life ongoing, indefinitely. Not.
And the last thing I'll say is give yourself grace.
Yeah,
Because
for sure.
like me finding Stu Weber's book, to me actually implementing to a point where I felt like I was a better person was years of just being still a turd, but slowly getting better.
Yeah. And that's all that matters.
Yeah.
But thanks for sharing, dude.
Yeah. I sure heard more than I was planning on.
I'm good, dude. It's something about this room, man.
It's something about this room.
It gets people to talk,
What's in this cold brew?
dude. Seriously.
True syrup?
But I'm super stoked that we get to do this and we have the privilege of doing this, and we need help. Everyone will say that, but we need help. And again, the goal is not for us to just continue to sit here and talk about it and just to hear it, but we genuinely want to help create change. We're trying to create that tension point that we just talked about. And so whatever that is in your life, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my goodness, like some of what Jordan just said is like, I'm dealing with that, or something Bed said last week, like I'm dealing with that too, or Sean or Hollow or Jimmy or George, like I'm dealing with a little bit of every one of those stories, and I just don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. Like, I hope we sparked something in you. I hope we triggered something. I hope it just created some form of emotion that makes you want to be like, oh shoot, all right, I got to do something. I can't just sit here. I can't let myself get fat, lazy, tired, unhappy, complain about everything, and have a victim mentality. Yeah. Like it's to genuinely spark that change, to slingshot you into momentum.
If we want to see, because everyone right now is talking about like how they want to see, especially the United States, change, right? If they want to see everything change. The most impact that you're going to have on this world is going to be your family, and like how you and your family. Like if everyone turned inward first and focused on changing themselves and their family, that'll naturally spill over to everywhere else.
Yeah, it's creating change in your sphere, your circle. But thank you guys. We're gonna hopefully have the shirts up soon.
Yes.
I got to figure out how to do that.
GoodDudeGoodDad.com. Please like, share, subscribe, send it to somebody.
Yeah.
Please, that would help us out a ton.
That'd be dope.
All right.
Thank you,
Be a good dude. Be a good dad.